time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Because when I wasn't playing, I was frustrated, like I said. But now he got me out there, and then now I'm proving that I can actually play. I think he has faith in me now.
It's definitely a learning experience. That was an immature move on my part, what I did, and it won't happen again. Just being able to take that moment and making something positive out of it. Other guys on the team are going to learn from it. I'm definitely going to learn from it. So I think it's not all negative, even though it was a negative play.
We're not playing a soft non-conference schedule. That's insulting to me. Okay, that's insulting to our players.
All right, who made Frank mad today?
Raising hand. That was my question.
You're making friends fast around here, aren't you?
Apparently.
Well, he did make friends because it actually stimulated something in his head he was thinking about.
He was triggered. He said he was triggered by my question.
Yeah. All right, but we're not going to hear from Frank tonight. We just heard from him last night, unless he said something big today that needs to be aired.
Other than what we just aired.
But what was the gist of what he was talking about?
Basically, I asked him a question that regarded the non-conference schedule. I asked him, what did you want to see out of your team, regardless of the record, basically to make you feel like they're prepared for the conference season?
Mm-hmm.
Very fair question. And he's like, I'm going to answer your question in a second, but I want to make sure I get this out for people who cover our team. We're not playing a soft non-conference schedule, and I'm insulted by the notion that that is the case.
So he must be hearing that somewhere from people, that they're playing a soft non-conference schedule?
He referenced the national writer. He referenced some other people who either talk on other places because, we don't hear what happens in other places because we are the foremost authority on all South Carolina and Clemson athletics. But apparently elsewhere they're saying that.
Well, you're learning fast. Well, let's see. The non-conference games for the Gamecocks. At Wofford, that's not a cupcake by any means.
And he even mentioned that particular contest. He said, I must be the dumbest coach in America to schedule that game on the road to start off the season.
That is not a cupcake.
In a new arena.
Mm-hmm.
Sold out
Western Michigan.
Who's picked to win their league.
The guy that they didn't sign from Baton Rouge is the one that went to Western Michigan.
Is that where he is?
Yeah, I think so.
Illinois State. Now, this is in a tournament, the Puerto Rico tip-off Coastal Carolina edition.
Mm-hmm.
Illinois State, Boise State, or UTEP. Then later on, FIU. Temple. Nothing wrong with Temple.
Temple's good.
UMass. Nothing wrong with UMass.
UMass is good.
Wyoming. Too bad our old friend
Larry Scheidt's
still not at Wyoming. Coastal Carolina, Cliff Ellis, always competitive in the Big South. Clemson.
And he even said that they don't get enough credit for playing Clemson, and Clemson doesn't get enough credit for playing them, which is kind of, in a way.
Limestone. Okay, now, I don't know why they're playing a D2 team in the regular season, but they are.
I think that's to fill a gap. He said he did something similar at Kansas State where they just had a gap. They just threw a game in there just to get some.
I mean, it's an in-state game, but it doesn't help you in terms of your RPI and all that stuff when it comes to crunch time. If you need that, and everybody will hold it against you. If they're, I'm just picking up numbers. If they're 23-12 or whatever on the bubble, people are going to say, "See, look, one of those wins against Limestone." Right. Even though it doesn't count in their RPI, they're going to point to that and say, "See, that's they shouldn't be in there because they played Limestone."
The thing about the way the league sets up this year,
and there's Texas Tech, by the way.
Yeah, Texas Tech is the one that's the real headliner, at least outside of the Clemson game. But the thing that he believes, and I think this is something that we saw a lot of coaches say at media days last week. They believe the strength of the league for the first time in a long time is actually going to take care of them, RPI-wise. They're expecting...
Well, they've said that a lot of times. And they end up getting 3 in, and they say, what happened?
Well, they're expecting 6 or 7 in this year, which, again, I still think is high.
Dream on, SEC.
It's a high number, but there are a lot of teams now that have improved. A&M's improved. Missouri's improved. Those are not perennial powers. And when you think about a team like South Carolina, who went to the Final Four last year, they're picked 11th. I mean, there's a lot of variability there.
Well, the other key is this. Teams know when teams are growing, how they're recruiting. They know the coaching staffs in the SEC. And one of the reasons I think the Big Ten is going to 20 games is they're trying to freeze out their largesse from teams outside of their conference. Look, we got enough protection inside of our conference with ranked teams. We don't need to play teams. You know, if South Carolina picks up that phone and calls North Carolina doesn't want to play them because North Carolina be giving them juice.
Well, I wouldn't play a school that has ineligible players.
Why'd you have to
in their history?
Why'd you have to get him started?
Well, I wouldn't play them. Why would you play? Why would you play a team that would throw out a bunch of ineligible players?
How he feels about North Carolina.
I know it's hot.
Of course, they could have an all. I don't think they will, but you know, you could have Jalik Felton and Seventh Woods in that backcourt. They wouldn't play together, I don't think, in the backcourt. No. That would really sting here in the state of South Carolina.
Just keep the PS3 away from those guys in the state dorms there at UNC.
What is that?
The PS4, the video games. Keep the video games away from the
yeah,
at UNC.
I get you. I get
Joel Berry.
Speak English, will you?
PS4, right. It's a PlayStation.
Yeah. It's Sports Talk here on a Thursday night from beautiful downtown Columbia. By the way, great World Series game last night.
Very nice.
Oh,
very nice.
Did you see the opening pitch?
I loved that. And our boss hates it, by the way. Our boss hated it.
Who's our boss?
Mr. Bill Pollack, our supervisor of sorts at Learfield. Our supervisor of sorts.
I didn't know that.
Supervisor of sorts.
I'll have to be nicer to him next time I talk to him.
He says he did not
I did not realize he was the boss.
He did not like the showing last night with Vin Scully. He thought that delayed the game too much.
I thought it was awesome.
I thought it was awesome.
I mean, if you love Vin Scully, yeah. Who doesn't love Vin Scully? I thought it was awesome.
That was great.
And then bringing out Fernando.
Yes. They could have delayed. Was great. They could have delayed that start a half hour. I wouldn't have cared because I love those guys.
Well, Vin Scully's just amazing. What is he, 91?
But
89.
89 and walking out. You know what? He's just so classic in the full dress suit, which is how he worked his games. Mm-hmm. And the voice is still as velvety as ever.
Pro said he went to bed before extra innings, though. He missed
a great finish.
Oh, no, I heard a home run to tie it, but I was not going to lose sleep.
Well, you know, they hit a home run. Dodgers got within one with a homer in the bottom of the 11th and put a little bit of angst on the side of the Astros.
I'm just glad we're going to get a series now. I was going to be very, very concerned if the Dodgers won that second game that Houston wouldn't be able to at least make it a series.
I don't know who said it, but just like they say in the NBA, it's not a series until a road team takes a game.
Man, that's what happened.
All right, our phone number tonight, as always, 800-956-7266. We've been so busy this week with the invasion of basketball, working that into the agenda that we haven't had time to take a bunch of phone calls. Love to hear from you tonight as we head into now crucial Saturday games, all moving forward for teams all across the country who at this point are having good seasons and now have hopes of a great season. Who is going to go from good to great? Clemson trying to bounce back from its loss a couple of weeks ago, see if the Tigers can regain their momentum and their swagger against Georgia Tech. South Carolina feeling pretty good about itself right now, trying to get to 6 wins, trying to clinch a bowl bid here early before November, and trying to maybe prove that their offense can be dynamic. Now, they're going to be facing a good defensive team in Vanderbilt, but this will be an opportunity where the Gamecock defense, I think, can go out, keep Vanderbilt's offense down under wraps, though Shermer can throw the ball well. I think South Carolina defensively, the way their secondary has been playing, can have a good day, get the ball back in good field position for the offense, and then see if the offense can complete some drives and score some touchdowns.
The dichotomy for these two teams, South Carolina and Clemson, with these next 3 weeks, I mean, we're in the witching hour of the season. This is when crazy stuff tends to happen around, Halloween, when you turn the calendar to November. I mean, those who win in November will be remembered. Those are the kinds of things that you hear this time of year. And the thing that I think is very, very interesting with South Carolina in particular is the fact that in their way, I know they need help, but in a way, they're kind of playing with house money at this point, especially if you look at the game they have this weekend against a team that's beatable, a game they have 2 weeks from now that's beatable. And if you win those 2 games, what happens in the middle is almost inconsequential.
Well, throw out all the injuries. The one key thing you think about is even the most hopeful Gamecock fan would say that South Carolina is 1 game off schedule, and that is the Kentucky game. If there's Kentucky, they're 6-1.
All right, we'll be right back here on Sports Talk. It's a busy edition of Sports Talk on South Carolina Radio Network, Thursday nights from downtown Columbia. Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor, Tom Hayes. 800-956-7266. See your phone calls in just a moment. We invite your calls tonight while we have time for them. At the bottom of this hour, we'll have the coach and the quarterback with us. We'll have recruiting for you coming up before the top of the hour. Hour number 2, we're going to have a beat writer who covers Georgia Tech with us.
Kelly Quinlan from Rivals.com.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We'll have him to talk about the Yellow Jackets and their approach to the Clemson game on Saturday night.
Morgan on the move as well on a Thursday.
Morgan on the move a little bit after 7 o'clock with Mike and a bunch more here on the program tonight. Your calls invited, 800-956-7266. Couple of quick notes to pass along. Clemson and Tennessee are going to play in a hurricane relief game.
They will.
Coming up.
They will. That's going to be the same day as South Carolina's relief game against Virginia Tech. Admission to that game is free, but they are asking folks to donate. Once they get in the door, they will be doing a drive for the Salvation Army's efforts in Florida and Texas to help with hurricane relief. They're going to play a double dip with the women who will play Belmont Abbey that day. By the way, Clemson's men picked today by the ACC preseason media poll to finish 13th.
Yeah,
out of 15.
Duke, number 1, receiving 57 first-place votes. North Carolina, 2, getting 7 votes. Notre Dame, 3, getting 4 votes. Miami getting 1 first-place vote is 4th. Louisville is 5th, followed by Virginia, Virginia Tech, Florida State, Georgia Tech, and Syracuse. Wake Forest is 11, NC State 12, Clemson 13, Boston College 14, Pittsburgh is 15, and on the ACC preseason Rookie of the Year balloting, Clemson's Amir Sims picked up 1 vote, probably from somebody from Clemson.
And South Carolina's women's basketball team already has their bulletin board material for the season. Preseason coaches poll has them behind UConn. UConn got 25 of the 32 first-place votes in that poll. They're number 1, South Carolina number 2 on the defending national championship. And 4 of their 5 leading scorers coming back. But no, we'll pick UConn first because it's UConn, it's Gino, and whatever.
Similar to Clemson having the trophy, but Alabama ranked number 1.
It's kind of the same thing.
Let's go to Gene in Greenville. First call of the night here on Sports Talk. Hello, Gene. Welcome in. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I wanted to call in, especially after I heard y'all talking about South Carolina playing Erskine.
Yes.
My dad played basketball at Erskine from 52 to 56.
Wow. Well, this should be special then.
And they had a football team. I think the last year was 52, if I'm not mistaken, his freshman year. But my dad said that he rode in a back of a pickup truck from due west to Clemson and watched Erskine scrimmage Clemson in a football game, and Erskine beat them.
Okay.
Also, my dad was 6'6". He averaged about 15 to 18 points a game for 4 years and 25 rebounds a game his junior year. And he got a card from the Lakers when they were still in Minnesota.
Wait a minute. 25 rebounds a game?
Yes, sir.
What was your dad's name?
Ralph Moore.
Ralph Moore. Okay.
And he's from the same hometown in Southern Illinois that Doug Collins is from.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad, I think his rebound record for the most rebounds in a game is somewhere around 48 or 51 in one game.
That's a lot.
So did he play for Coach Alexander?
Yes, he played Coach Alexander.
Played for Coach Alexander.
That's how my dad ended up at Erskine. Gene Alexander is also from Benton, Illinois, where my dad and Doug Collins is from.
Well, that's a great story, see, because and thank you for your phone call. If I may talk a personal note here, see, all of that is connected to my high school coach, the great Eddie Rice, who was one of the best players in Southern Illinois in high school. And he actually signed with South Carolina, didn't like it because it was just too big for him, transferred to Erskine, played for Gene Alexander, became a little All-American at Erskine, and then came to Latta High School in 1950-something and stayed there until his death.
Were you using peach baskets at that time, I'm sure?
No, I think they had the regular baskets.
They cut the bottom out of them. back then. The Salukis of Southern Illinois.
Unbelievable. So you just can't have a mature conversation with the immature.
Oh, stop it.
Well, we do grow
make like you never take swings at the easy ones either. Come on now.
We do grow a lot of peaches here in the state, but we didn't use peach baskets. But what was also the alma mater of Walt Frazier and Mike Glenn in Southern Illinois.
Thank you for your phone call. I did not realize that's pretty good. 25 rebounds per game. I mean, that's along the lines of who's the guy with the Clippers out of Texas A&M?
DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah, guy's a rebounding machine. All right, thank you for your call. 800-956-7266. Let's turn our attention to this weekend because we have some huge games this weekend.
Yes,
I mean, of course we have, but we have, South Carolina and Vanderbilt, homecoming for the Gamecocks, must win. Now, I know that's a cliche, but I mean, really, if South Carolina wants to have a semi-special year, maybe even a special year, you got to beat Vanderbilt at home. That gives you that chance. And then you got Clemson and Georgia Tech. There is, for the first time, well, I guess since they lost to Pittsburgh, there's a little bit of questioning about Clemson going on. And everybody wants to see just how healthy Kelly Bryant is. If he is back to health, and by that I mean able to take a hit on the ankle and get up and not be limping and not be hampered, then they're going to be fine.
I'm more concerned about the nervousness from the Clemson fan base. I mean, you heard it last night when we had Will Merritt on the show. They are dead scared of this Georgia Tech team, and it's because Georgia Tech, and we've been talking about it all week, the run-to-pass ratio, and again, it's done basically because they don't need to pass. They're 90% run right now because they're getting everything they want to with the run. And the two games they lost, Phil, were winnable games. They should not have lost that game to Tennessee, and they were 1 point from losing the game against Miami.
Well, Brent Venables has had the elixir against that option. I think Georgia Tech still has to throw the football against that Clemson defense. But I was more –
but they're not. I mean, they've only thrown 53 passes. Unless they fall behind.
They're going to run it into death.
Yeah, I was thinking about what Will Merritt said about leadership because everybody talked about Deshaun Watson. And I always said, but wait a minute, if you're mentioning leadership, you have to also mention Ben Boulware, who's not in that locker room. Remember, Ben Boulware is the type of guy who walked on the field, we're going to play defense. If you don't play defense, you're going to be scared of me in the locker room. Did South Carolina have somebody like that years ago? Yes, Swearinger. If you went on the field and was not playing, and we're not playing do your best, Swearinger would get in some shirts. And that's where I think Will Merritt was saying we'll see what kind of leadership Clemson has on defense after all those busts against Syracuse the last time.
Yeah, they have to do a little bit of making up to their teammates because it wasn't just because Kelly Bryant went down with the injury. Yes, that didn't help Clemson against Syracuse. You were there. That defense did not have a good game.
It didn't. There were so many busts on the secondary. Tanner Muse, who you heard in the open, referenced his unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that made Clemson have to kick from 15 yards back. That was obviously something that put them behind the 8 ball and changed the field position dynamic in that football game. They had a lot of things go wrong for them. I would say it wasn't quite that everything went wrong, but enough went wrong for them in order for them to lose that football game. And the only way that they were going to lose that football game is if they had multiple things in that nature go wrong, as in not sticking with the run. There was, I think, a period of time where they went almost an entire quarter without a run play. Again, I think a lot of that, again, was predicated on the fact that they could not use Kelly Bryant in the run game. The threat of the run was basically one-dimensional. It was only running back based. So in that vein for Clemson, their offense became predictable, therefore easy to stop.
All right, so we look forward to that one Saturday night at Death Valley. 8 o'clock could be wet. Talking about rain on Saturday. Of course, it could be wet here in Columbia.
Bring your poncho.
I want to see that Gamecock offense live up to expectations. Now, the offensive line will be healthy, and it will be deep. Too bad Deebo Samuel's not there. Too bad Casey Crosby's not there.
Excuse time's over for them. They got to play this week.
Too bad Rico Dowdle's not there, but they still have enough weaponry to step it up and put some points on the board. They should beat Vanderbilt to the point where they're getting in some backups. Maybe a Michael Skarnecki is showing in the late third quarter, fourth quarter. We'll be back. We are back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a Thursday night from downtown Columbia. Glad to have you with us.
Don't the people who know you can't talk between 6 and 8 o'clock?
I know my phone is ringing off the hook. Maybe I won a prize or something. We'll get back to more of your phone calls in a little bit. Got a lot to do here in the next half hour here of Sports Talk. In just a moment, we'll be joined by the coach and the quarterback, Chuck Reedy, and Steve Tannehill. I want to remind you that here on Sports Talk, among the good folks who bring us your way are the soybean farmers of South Carolina and their checkoff. So learn more at scsoybeans.org. Pork powered by soy. We welcome in the coach, Chuck Reedy, here to Sports Talk. Steve Tannehill will be joining us in just a couple of moments. Coach, good to have you with us. How are you?
Doing great, Phil. Good to be with you.
Yes, sir. We thank you. Now, off weeks as a coach, both when you were assistants and the head coach at Baylor, how did you like to deal with off weeks? If you were coming off a loss, how did you deal with it because you had 2 weeks to wait? Or if you were coming off a win, how did you deal with it? Because if you're coming off a win, maybe you wanted to play the next week. How did you handle the off weeks?
I think you have to, whether you're coming off a win or a loss, you have to handle it the same way. And I think it's a good time to let the players get away for a few days, and, get away. It's a long, long season. You start, the first part of August and you go all the way, hopefully to December or January. They need to get away a little bit. And, you spend the first week, as I saw that South Carolina did, working a lot with your young kids, giving them an opportunity to get some coaching, which they don't get a lot of once the season starts. And just trying to improve as a football team. And then obviously the second week of it, you're into your regular game week preparation.
Did you find that it was easy to restart the engines of the players, that they were eager to get back at it and had a lot of energy and healed up a little bit, or sometimes a little sluggish getting back into the work?
I think and of course a lot of it has to do with when your open week comes, but in the case of Clemson and Carolina, both of them obviously the same week, it came at a good time. I mean, because you're 7 weeks into the season. Both teams needed this opportunity to get some players healthy, and even though Clemson's coming off of a loss, I mean, their season still has been very positive. South Carolina obviously very positive at this point. So I think both of them, are eager to get back at it and play, get ready to play another game.
Chuck, this can be attributed to Clemson mostly, but even more for South Carolina also. But when you have a loss before your bye week, people always talk about the old adage, you don't want to let one loss beat you twice. Does that kind of go away with the bye week? Does that kind of feeling go away, or does it even enrage you a little bit more to make sure that you want to make sure you don't have that bad taste in your mouth?
Yeah, well, when you have a loss, the bad thing about a bye week is you have to live with it for 2 weeks, and that's the negative, and you just want to get out there and play again to get that taste out, out of your mouth. So obviously Clemson, they've had to live with this, for 2 weeks, but they still, they've got a lot of positive things, in front of them if they take care of business. And so, they just, they had to put that behind them and move forward.
The QB, Steve Tannehill, joins us also here on Coaching the QB here on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. I want to ask a technical question, Steve, because they were talking to Jake Bentley about his footwork and the fact that he, in the offseason, according to him, worked so much on his footwork that is almost completely screwed him up in a way because he's getting kind of happy feet in the pocket. Have you noticed that? And how do you go about fixing that?
Well, I think the happy feet, we talked about it a few weeks earlier, was the happy feet is because of the rush. The happy being, that's just natural. You can practice and practice and practice to do the right things in the pocket. But when you feel that pressure, some of that's just natural instincts take over, and you got to get out of the pressure. something I don't think you can work on as much in the season as you can in the off season. I just don't believe that. That's an off season issue. I think we should be worried about more things. I don't think as much as we got to find a way to score points. And I don't think it's necessarily Jake being happy, having happy feet in the pocket. I'm just not with that. I just don't right now.
Yeah. Did you ever have happy feet? Were you ever accused of having happy feet?
Of course, every quarterback does. But I mean, that's basically because of pressure. I mean, you don't hear having happy feet. I mean, because he just stands there and the ball's out of his hand in 2.5 seconds and it's good to go. Having happy feet is because of pressure. And your mind gets on a clock, and that clock is through experience. So if you're normally just standing by there 4 seconds, well, then your mind and your feet go together. Well, I got 4 seconds. Well, if you're only standing by there 2 seconds, and normally you're having to move, well, then your mind and your feet are back in that time frame. So anyone that doesn't get any pressure, I mean, if a quarterback goes through a season and doesn't get sacked or pressured a lot, then they definitely don't have happy feet because they don't have to go anywhere. So I think it has a lot to do with the pressure, not so much he has happy feet.
Coach, you were talking several weeks ago, I think prior to the Tennessee game, that when you looked at South Carolina's offense with some of the RPOs, you said, look, there are some quarterback runs that's there, and they're running they're playing an offense where the quarterback does not run. Now, they showed the run in some design runs for Jake Bentley in the Tennessee game. Do you see that going forward, and how effective do you think that can be?
Well, I think that was very effective for him, and I think it's something that I think Bentley, he's not a great runner, but he certainly is, and he can make plays with his feet. And I just firmly believe, and not to beat this to death, which I probably have, but if you're a spread team with one running back, your quarterback, has to be able to make some runs. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time running the football. And like you said against Tennessee, really when they needed it, he made some big runs. And I think, at the right time, certainly, him making plays with his feet is going to be critical for South Carolina.
The coach and the quarterback with us, Chuck Reedy and Steve Tannehill. Steve, we have a poll question on our website this week. Has USC closed the gap on Clemson this season? Now, this is coming off, of course, USC winning last time out, Clemson losing. So, Gamecock fans are a little giddy. Clemson fans are a little down. A lot of people have voted. 50% are saying they haven't. 49% are saying they have. So from your expert viewpoint, do you see the gap closing? And, of course, the question is, how big was the gap, and are we formulating the gap simply on last year's game in which, Clemson embarrassed the Gamecocks?
Well, I mean, I think that's how the gap has closed. You go by how they match up to each other. I think that question will be easily answered here in about 5 weeks. I think it goes back a lot to recruiting and the depth. We don't have the depth that Clemson does, and I don't think we have it at very many positions. I think we do have it at some on offense. We have wide receivers and we have 3, capable backs. But depth, I don't think we've closed the gap. Now, I think we're playing above and beyond expectations, especially on defense. But we to close the gap, you got to build depth, and I don't know that we've done that. And you can't expect Muschamp to do that in 2 years. It takes time. Dabo's been there 8 or 9 years to build that program to what it is. So it takes some time.
All right, guys, hang on. Got a few more questions for you after the upcoming break. We're visiting with the coach and the quarterback on a Thursday edition of Sports Talk. We'll be right back. Well, the other reason we should.
Just plain fun.
Sometimes your eyes. All right, we're back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a Thursday night. Back to the coach and the quarterback in just a moment. Brought to you by South Carolina Electric Cooperative, sponsors of the Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl. Find out more about what the co-ops are doing across the state. Visit ecsc.org. And, of course, that date, December 9th, for the 2017 Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl. Chuck, same question for you. I asked Steve from your Barco Lounger at your estate on the lake, watching the teams. And the ultimate comparison will be when they play, of course. But do you think the game will be more competitive this year? Do you see the gap closing as we word it?
Yeah, it'll be much more competitive. The one thing, and if South Carolina continues to play in games where they don't beat themselves, where they don't turn the ball over, they don't have silly penalties, they don't, make a lot of silly mistakes, they're going to be competitive, with anybody they play. Now, they're probably not going to be talented enough to beat Clemson and Georgia. But when you don't beat yourself, you've got a chance against anybody. And that's what, I credit Coach Muschamp and their staff. I think they've done a fantastic coaching job. I mean, because they've taken a football team that's not real talented, lost their best player, in the third game of the season. And here we are 5-2, with a really good chance of being 8-4. And, and it's because they're just playing good, solid football. Nothing flashy, but, they're not doing crazy things to beat themselves. And so with that in mind, the gap is certainly closed. Now, Clemson obviously is, they're recruiting at a level that's above South Carolina, but the gap is closed.
Now, let me ask you this last thing, guys. I'll start with you, Chuck. We're getting that time of the year where the old proverbial hot seat is heating up under a lot of coaches around the country, and right here in the SEC area. Of course, Ole Miss is open, but I think there are three guys who are in real jeopardy at Arkansas, at Tennessee, and maybe at Florida. I mean, people at Florida are getting real antsy with Jim McElwain. He didn't really help himself this week by coming out and talking about alleged death threats and things like that. Chuck, I know you've got ties in Florida as well, and ties in the coaching world. I mean, those three guys, Bielema, Jones, McElwain, do you think they survived this year?
Well, Jones doesn't. I mean, Bielema, the only thing that will salvage him will be his buyout, which is, I don't think it's $15 million. I think it's more like 8 or 9, but that's still, that may save him one more year. McElwain, they're not going to fire McElwain. I mean, McElwain may get out if Arizona opens. I don't think he'd go to Oregon State, but he may just decide to get out. He's a little bit different. He's more of a West Coast guy anyway. But they're not going to fire him. I mean, the guy, he's been there 2 years and won 2 division championships. And the recruiting class is in the top 5 or 6 in the country. So, they from a recruiting standpoint, they've kind of got it turned down a little bit.
Well, I had a quick question for Steve. The hot button for fans right now, Steve, as far as South Carolina is concerned, is Hayden Hurst. Can we get the ball to him more? Now, the question is, are teams taking him out of the game thinking he's a Linus blanket for Jake Bentley, or has he become so valuable in a rejuvenated running game that they're using him more as a blocker?
I don't think teams are taking him out of the way or out of the picture because he's not getting that much. So if you're not throwing the ball or attempting to throw the ball, I don't think teams got to take him away. I wish they would get the ball to him more. I don't know about our rejuvenated running game. I just don't know that that's really what's going on. We scored 15 points against a Tennessee team that's not very good. we're going to have to score more points. Even the game before that, we had 2 defensive touchdowns. So we have to find a way to get Hayden Hurst the ball in some space. He's very talented. He's going to the NFL draft. I mean, I think everybody thinks that. I think it. I think it'll be, maybe the second or third tight end off the board. I wish we'd do more. He is very valuable in a run game. If you really watch the games, when they use him as that H-back, he destroys guys. But I think we should find a way to get him the ball more.
All right, guys. Last question real quick. Steve, this weekend, give me your predictions. USC Clemson, who wins, who loses?
For sure. I mean, I just think they're having a loss and a bye week. Man, those guys are getting. I heard Coach say that they're getting ready to get back on that field and get that taste out of your mouth. And I think Carolina wins. Hopefully, we can score some points. I don't think Vandy's that good, but if you don't play well, I think Vandy can hang around. Hopefully, we'll do what it takes.
Mm-hmm. And Clemson, did you say Clemson? Oh, you said Clemson would win. Okay. Chuck, what do you think?
Clemson.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, South Carolina, I think they win. Clemson will win. I think it's going to be real interesting to see where Kelly Bryant is. I think if you can't run, then it's going to be a close ball game. But Brent Venables, he's got Georgia Tech's number. They're going to put those 2 big defensive tackles over Georgia Tech's guards. They're going to knock them in the backfield, and all of a sudden the option, it really struggles. But Clemson, Clemson will win at home.
All right, saying what you just said, do you think Paul Johnson counters in some way? Will he throw a different wrinkle into that?
Paul Johnson knows more about that offense than anybody in the world. And, if there is a counter. But the problem is, I mean, if you're going to run the option, and certainly if you're going to run the inside veer, which is the first part of the option, you have to have some movement at the point of attack. Mm-hmm. And what Clemson can do with Lawrence and Wilkins, they'll line them up. They'll knock Georgia Tech's guards in the backfield, and all of a sudden the whole option is. I mean, now that you're bouncing around trying to get back on your tracks, and but yeah, Paul will have some answers, but he hadn't had any answers the last 2 years. I mean, as much as he knows about it, sometimes personnel just eliminates any scheme that you may have.
Yeah. Guys, we can't thank you enough, obviously, because we don't pay anything. And so we do appreciate you being with us. We will give a shout-out to Group Therapy once again, Columbia's favorite gathering spot, correct?
Fantastic chili cook-off last weekend,
Fantastic chili cook-off.
Thank you.
Mr. Pelagic here was wondering if you actually recognized him when he saw you there.
No, I don't.
I literally walked up and shook Steve Tannehill's hand,
and he didn't know.
He didn't realize who the heck I was. It was very bad.
You have met before, Steve. We were there.
You should have introduced. There's a lot of people who introduced themselves to me. You should have just told me. It'd have been all good, brother.
Yeah.
I apologize.
You owe him a cold one.
Ain't no problem.
You owe him a cold one. Hey, good hunting out there. You going deer hunting this weekend?
Oh, yeah. It's going to be good temperatures.
There you go. Hey, Chuck, thank you, man. We appreciate it. Steve, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bill.
I knew he didn't recognize me.
Who? See, and you thought you had taken Columbia by storm and the state by storm.
I think he recognized getting my car serviced the other day. So it was like, guy listens to us every day.
That's great.
So it was not bad.
That's good. You're making progress.
It is.
We're proud of it.
It's the haircut. It's all about the haircut.
Thank you to the coach and the quarterback. Really appreciate their insight. Great stuff. When we come back,
even if they don't recognize us,
Mike Morgan will be here. Hey, if you lose us now, remember you can get us on our website, SportsTalkSC.com, if you want to stay with us, watch our stream there, or, of course, on the TuneIn app. Check out our Columbia affiliate, The Point Radio. Top of the hour break. We'll be back.
Round 2 of Sports Talk with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
We are back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. From downtown Columbia, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. On this Thursday night, it is time to welcome in Mike Morgan. Morgan on the move. We'll get to recruiting in just a couple of minutes, but first, Mike Morgan, brought to you by BP Skinner Clothiers. People nationwide get their custom-made suits and accessories from Brett Skinner. Very best in suits, shirts, pants, shoes, and more available to you, located in Columbia. Visit the showroom in the Vista. No matter where you are, Brett will come to you. Check them out online at bpskinnerclothiers.com and set up an appointment. And by Founders Federal Credit Union, their mortgage team is more equipped than ever to help you with the mortgage process. Whether buying or refinancing, visit foundersfcu.com/mortgage to apply today. Welcome in, Mike Morgan, here to Sports Talk. All right, you know, I've come to the conclusion when it comes to the fans of the millennial era that they rank things in this order when it comes to college football. A, recruiting is number 1. B, firing coaches is number 2. And 3, the games. So I want to talk about firing. I know you don't want to talk about recruiting. We'll do that later. Firing of the coaches.
Thank you.
And we were talking with Chuck Reedy in our segment a little while ago. So I think, of course, Ole Miss is open. We know that. Then I'm thinking there are 3 coaches in the SEC on the hot seat: Arkansas, Tennessee, and do you think Florida? You think McElwain is on there? Who? You're saying 4. Who else are you saying?
Missouri.
Oh yeah. You think Hoke? I mean, you think Odom? Odom is on the hot seat, even though his president just said he's fine.
Well, the president's on the hot seat.
He just beat Idaho, for crying out loud. They mashed Idaho. The potatoes. I'm sorry, Mike. We're taking up your time.
Phil, how are you?
Great.
Is the segment started yet?
Yes, we're underway. You're rolling.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, no, to your point, it is a landmark year, no matter how many coaches actually get fired versus remain on a hot seat with a, dreaded vote of confidence going into next season. The word of the year for me in the SEC is angst. How many fan bases feel angst about their program and where they're going with the particular coach? So Butch Jones is going to be fired. I think we all know that. That's the one certainty.
Should he be fired, in your opinion? Well, I guess you can't say that as one of the SEC announcers.
Yeah, let me. I'm not going to say should.
Yeah,
because you're right. I try to avoid that, but I'll say this: I'm not shocked based on what has happened, based on what the expectations are at Tennessee, based on some embarrassing losses the last couple of years. And really, this year is just kind of this is just a compounded problem, which started last year, where they clearly should have, based on talent, based on what they had back, won an Eastern Division that was woeful, and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, sealed his fate, and this was just the final glancing blow. Well, maybe it's more than glancing, as it turns out. So I think Tennessee, there's a change. I'm going to be in Arkansas next week for the Razorbacks and the Chanticleers, and that might be the only game Arkansas is favored in the rest of the year. Brett Bielema, look, I like the hire of Brett Bielema. I like Brett Bielema, but it's year 5, and I don't know where Arkansas is going. I don't know what their identity is. I just don't know. I think that's a 50-50 shot. Odom, I think, gets another year at Missouri just because. And then, McElwain, that is a mess, and it doesn't seem like a great fit. But I can't imagine firing a coach after 3 years who did go to 2 SEC championship games. But if he keeps acting bizarre and telling weird stories that may or may not be validated, then there could be a mutual parting of the ways, is what some people have told me behind the scenes. There's just a lot there that seems a little bit off right about now.
We were talking about this last night about the power inside the SEC East, whether it's real or perceived or not there. Georgia obviously is head and shoulders ahead of everybody right now in that division. How would you rate the strength of that division top to bottom? Is it still far subservient to the SEC West, or has it closed the gap at all this year?
I don't think it's closed the gap much at all. It's not only subservient to the SEC West. I think it's subservient to just about every conference in college football, if you want to break it down that way. Now we could really parse things and say, well, is the SEC East versus the, I don't know, the
ACC Coastal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go down that road, because then we're just we're comparing mediocre versus mediocre. But the bottom line is the East has a lot of work to do. Georgia was never in dire straits from a talent standpoint. They just couldn't get over the hump with Mark Richt, and now it seems like Kirby, after a less than auspicious year one, has got it going in year two. And I don't think they're going anywhere. I mean, you follow recruiting guys, and they're not going anywhere in terms of talent. I think Kirby is learning on the job and doing a good job of it. But Florida, Tennessee, Carolina, I think, is on the way up under Will Muschamp. I think he's done a tremendous job, but they clearly are a year or two away. Florida and Tennessee have to get back to some kind of prominence for this division to even come anywhere close to what the Western Division is right now.
Your feeling about the state of Florida, because Florida, obviously they can recruit to the University of Florida, but when you see the resurgence of teams like a Central Florida and a South Florida, that talent in the state of Florida is really getting diluted, where you'd see maybe Florida State would have got some recruits years ago. Charlie Strong and Frost over at Central Florida siphoned off some of that talent that those schools used to get.
Yeah, I mean, with that being said, look, Charlie inherited a really good team. I don't think Charlie gets as much credit. Maybe he's getting more credit than I would give him for what's happened at USF. He inherited a good spot. Willie Taggart set that up, and they have a quarterback in Flowers that is a true Power 5 quarterback playing in a non-Power 5 league. And when you have that, you're going to dominate that conference. We'll see how they do against a UCF team who will probably be undefeated in a couple weeks. And what is their big rivalry there? The I-4 corridor, or whatever they're calling it these days. But bottom line is Florida State, Miami, there's not a kid in the state of Florida that's going to turn down one of those schools to go to UCF or USF. So you can still get your pick of the litter, and you can recruit nationally, which is why, to see what's been going on at Florida, a school that has had a tremendous tradition of having great offense, and they can't throw the forward pass now for a period of ridiculous amount of time. Six games of Will Greer was notwithstanding. That to me is unacceptable, and it's unacceptable to that fan base. And Jim McElwain was brought in to do one thing, because anybody can recruit at Florida, and they already have good defenses at Florida. He was there to fix the offense, and it hadn't been fixed. Florida State's a different animal because their starting quarterback goes down. They're going to be fine with Jimbo Fisher. Miami's having a resurgence with Mark Richt, not surprisingly. But Florida's an enigma. And how they haven't been able to get it together now for this amount of time, where they've been so unbelievably inept on offense, it boggles the mind, and it's really hard to explain.
All right, we got about a minute. I'll give you a chance to give at least a 5-word answer, maximum 5-word answer to this proposition here. South Carolina wins out in the SEC. Florida beats Georgia. Kentucky loses one more game. Well, hold on, fella. I got people falling out of their chairs here. Kentucky loses a game in the SEC, one more, maybe to Tennessee this weekend. South Carolina wins the SEC East and plays Alabama. Doable?
Well, that's not going to happen.
5 words?
There's so many things in that scenario that are not going to happen. Starting with Georgia losing to Florida, that's not going to happen. We can just stop right there, can't we? I mean, that's not – Georgia's winning the East. But for South Carolina, more realistically, that game against Florida, that means a lot. I mean, you already beat Tennessee. I thought that was a quality win. If you could beat Florida in the same year, boy, that's a big feather in Will Muschamp's cap in year number 2.
Hey, Mike, thank you, man. Always great hearing from you. Mike Morgan on the Move here on Sports Talk. We're back in just a moment. All right, we're back with you, Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network from downtown Columbia. Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, the Professor Tom Hayes. Let's learn more about Georgia Tech. We're sitting here watching the Georgia Tech Coaches Show and watching them throw the football a couple of times. Let's welcome in Kelly Quinlan, who covers the Yellow Jackets for Jackets Online on the Rivals Network. Kelly, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Good, man. So we're watching this this passing machine of Georgia Tech here. How many times do you think they'll throw it against the Tigers?
In the high end, probably 12, maybe 14. The last few weeks, last week against Wake Forest, they they technically, if you want to get technical about it, they dropped back to pass 14 times. They only threw 11 of them. We got sacked 3 times. Pass pro has not been really great so far this year for them, so they're a little more reluctant to sling the ball than they have been in the past anyways. So I think it's going to be a lot of runs, and Paul Johnson trying to shorten that game as much as possible.
We've been hearing a lot about how much different this option attack is from Paul Johnson's scheme of mind. We've been hearing that from the Clemson players and coaches all week. What makes this year's vintage of the Georgia Tech option offense different?
Yeah, for the first time in a while, they have more of a guy that will go north-south inside the tackle box at quarterback that's a little more willing to take that punishment. And they're a little more dynamic in terms of having a home run threat at the B-back position, that primary fullback that touches the ball. Those two guys, the quarterback, Taquan Marshall, and Hervante Benson, the B-back, they both can break pretty much anything into a touchdown if you give them the seam. So it's a little bit different. Justin Thomas, who was really successful at Georgia Tech, he was more of an outside guy and a little bit better passer probably than Taquan. And so they're getting more aggressive in terms of running the football and not being afraid to really have some grinding drives. I mean, they've had some 17, 20, 15-play drives this year that are more reminiscent of when, like, Josh Nesbitt was playing quarterback in the early at the end of the 2000s.
Talking with Kelly Quinlan from Jackets Online covering Georgia Tech. Now, Kelly, Clemson totally dominated Tech last year, held them under 100 yards rushing, and one thing that they did defensively, take those big defensive tackles and just pushed Georgia Tech's guards and center back, into the backfield and made it difficult for Georgia Tech to do its thing. The average on the line for Tech is 292, and up front, Clemson averages about 290, maybe close to 300. So my question is, do you think this time around Georgia Tech's offensive line is better suited, more prepared to handle Christian Wilkins and Dexter Lawrence and those big, strong inside players that Clemson will bunch in there?
Well, it gets interesting because really there's two guys sort of swaying those weights too. Kenny Cooper, the center, is a big guy, over 300 pounds. And then Shamir Devine's like 370, 380. The rest of the offensive linemen are probably 270 or under. So, yeah, it's a little bit different. They played really poorly last year against Clemson at home. They just really missed a lot of blocks, and I don't even necessarily think it was – I think they just were intimidated, or I'm not sure what happened. It was an execution problem almost as much as a physical dominance issue from Clemson. I think they'll be a little bit better. To me, this is just a terrible matchup for Georgia Tech in terms of their offense against what Brent Venables has done at Clemson. And I mean, let's face it, they have 8 guys in their rotation on the D-line at Clemson that most of whom would start for the other teams in the league. So when you get into that, it's just a difficult for anyone. And really, these are the types of teams that give Paul Johnson's offense trouble. If you're really, really talented up front, 2009 against Iowa in the Orange Bowl comes to mind. Some of those Virginia Tech teams that Bud Foster had. And then the last couple of years with Clemson, as they've started to kind of move up in terms of the level of athlete that they've had and the level of coaching, it's been a tougher matchup for Tech. But, I go into this game feeling the same way I did last year when Georgia Tech played at Virginia Tech and they had the starting quarterback out and the starting B-back out. And they went out and won that game. So you never know what can happen. And obviously, Syracuse is certainly not a world beater, and they, gave Clemson all they can handle. And really, Clemson has not solidly beat a good team this year. So it'll be interesting to see how they play with their backs up against the wall at night at home.
Obviously, one of the things you worry about is for Georgia Tech the last couple of years they played Clemson, is Clemson jumped off to a big start, got a 2-score lead, sort of nullified that option for playing catch-up because obviously you want to hold on to the football. But on the other side of the ball, they gave up the big play late. Of course, it was a kind of a freak catch against Miami. And Wake Forest hit Tech with some big gash plays in that football game. How worried is the defense about this matchup if a healthy Kelly Bryant is quarterback in Clemson?
Well, that's where they struggled in the first half with Wake Forest. Wake Forest does something a little bit different than pretty much anyone else in the league with that kind of slow mesh that they run and the patience that they have in terms of running the ball. And they finally just kind of started attacking them downhill and getting more aggressive, and that sort of took care of that. With Clemson, the whole thing is they have so many guys that can, if they get into space, are just gone. So you have to really play that fundamental football. That's something that I think of the last game up at Clemson. I remember maybe the second play of the game, Clemson just runs off tackle to the left for like a 60-yard touchdown. I mean, you can't have those type of lapses. You can't get behind early. They really need to start fast on defense. That's been a struggle. The defense has really kind of struggled on usually the opening drive of the game all season. That's something that's kind of been a touchdown of Ted Root's defense since he's been at Georgia Tech. They've struggled early in games and then gotten better typically as it goes on. You can't afford to do that on Saturday. I think you have to come out and get a stop here or there and make Clemson feel like they have to press. Because quite frankly, the way Clemson's got to look at it is they're in a playoff mode now. You can't lose again. If you lose again, you're basically irrelevant in terms of the ACC and in terms of what any aspirations they still have left of getting in the playoffs. So, the pressure's on Clemson in this game to me, and that's where it's going to get interesting because, how do those teams handle it? How does Dabo get his team ready? That's the kind of stuff I think is kind of an X factor, and this Georgia Tech can kind of go into it. They're not expected to win the game. They're 2 touchdown dogs on the road. It's a tough draw. If they play them even tight, I think that's going to get a lot of people's attention.
Kelly, we got about a minute left, but I wanted to ask you a Georgia Tech specific question. How does Paul Johnson handle the unique challenge of having to recruit at a school like Georgia Tech that runs a unique offense that not a lot of people run?
Well, sort of a double-edged sword, too, because of the academic issues at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech has probably some of the most stringent academic standards in the country. So basically what they look for is, most high schools, the best player on the team is the quarterback. They recruit a lot of high school quarterbacks. They move them around to different positions on the offense. And then defensively, it's sort of the same kind of recruiting as anyone else. And really the wide receiver thing, they put a lot of guys in the league, so they've been able to attract pretty good wide receiver talent throughout his tenure. Because quite frankly, NFL teams like guys who can block, and his wide receivers block.
Well, we look forward to the game. It's going to be a little wet, I think, talking about chance of rain. Now, does that, when it comes to the triple option with Georgia Tech, if it's a wet field, if it's a rainy night, does that bother them in the way they handle the football?
I think it depends on how bad it is. They played a game in a monsoon against Miami, and neither team could really do anything in the middle of the game. Typically, it's not been a huge factor. I think in some ways it may help Georgia Tech just because it may limit kind of what Clemson's able to do in terms of taking downfield shots and things like that, trying to spread out the defense. With the offense, they can kind of just go back into a shell and do a lot of inside running and stuff like that and just try to go 3-4 yards at a time instead of trying to hit chunk plays.
Hey, Kelly, we thank you very much, man. Have a great rest of the week. We'll see you in the Valley on Saturday night.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Kelly Quinlan from Jackets Online, Rivals Network, covers Georgia Tech.
Really good.
Sounds like he thinks Clemson's going to win this one pretty easily.
You should talk to some of the Clemson people who are basically thinking that Georgia Tech's going to give them a run for their money. Well, I can't read this game. This game is so hard to read.
Clemson covers, gets back to doing their stuff. Back in a moment.
Why do you think we're rooting against you?
Oh, I can tell. I can just simply tell. All right, we're back on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Recruiting coming up in just a moment. Also, we're going to hear from the Gamecocks' Mon Denson and from Clemson defensive coordinator Brett Venables. You know, this is the week when he has some sleepless nights getting ready for Georgia Tech. Brought to you by South Carolina soybean farmers we are and their checkoff. Learn more at scsoybeans.org. Pork, powered by soy. Let's give you the recruiting report for tonight. Last night, Clemson picked up a basketball commitment from a big man, 6'11", Trey Jemison, Hoover, Alabama, announced his commitment to the Tigers via Twitter. He also considered Auburn, Alabama, Georgia Tech, Oklahoma State, Harvard, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt. He was offered by Clemson last year and visited last football season. He recently took an official visit to Harvard. He is Clemson's third commitment for the 2018 class. They have one scholarship based on the current numbers. One scholarship left. I wonder who they're holding that one for. Clemson offered 2019 6'3" Trey McGowans of Hargrave Military Prep in Virginia, formerly from Wren, reclassified for the 2019 class, recently offered by Kansas State. Also has Charlotte, Ole Miss, South Florida, VCU, College of Charleston, Wofford, Rice, New Mexico on his list. According to various reports, 2019 6'11" Brandon Stone and 2020 6'3" Lawrence Berry of Arden, North Carolina, plan to visit USC unofficially Saturday. Stone also visited USC in February. He's a Pennsylvania native who reclassified for 2019. He also has recently visited West Virginia and Pitt. He has offers from Pitt, Houston, Duquesne, and St. Joseph's. Berry recently was offered by Tennessee. 2019 6'5" Wendell Moore of Concord, North Carolina, has USC in his top 10 with Wake Forest, North Carolina, Duke, Washington, Wake Forest, NC State, Maryland, Kansas, and Ohio State. Hey, Wendell, if you want to go to college, not take real classes, get a diploma, stay eligible, go to North Carolina.
Wow.
Just my suggestion.
Man. Wow.
Man.
Am I wrong?
Well, a title.
Make it sound like North Carolina personally affronted you.
They affronted America.
Wow.
Last time I checked, I'm an American.
All the soapboxes you want to get on, that's the one that apparently annoys you the most.
There's a lot of things that annoy me
I understand.
in the sports world. Well, that one's moved to the top.
Especially
and if you're not annoyed
age.
about it, then there's something wrong with you.
It's not that I'm not annoyed. It's just that I know it ain't going to change.
Defensive back Tyreek Johnson of Jacksonville has taken an official to UCLA. This weekend, he goes to Ohio State. On the 17th of November, he goes to Clemson. After that, he'll choose one of those three. And he told us, contrary to some internet projections, that he's a Clemson lean and Clemson bound. He wants it known he does not have a favorite at this point. In fact, his words to me were, please don't make this a Clemson bias report. And I said, of course not. You tell me what you feel and we'll report it.
Somebody thinks that you're a Clemson bias?
No. He's had people out there, the internet websites, projecting him to Clemson, and he doesn't want that out there. Now, maybe inside his heart, that's how he feels.
Interesting.
But publicly, he doesn't. But he said he does love the Tigers, a program that is proving themselves, and it's a place he can see himself at, and they like how he can play corner and safety. He's been to Clemson before. He likes the way Venables coaches him up on the defense. He'll be an early grad. He'll make his decision no sooner than December 3rd. Clemson also is recruiting his teammate and fellow DB, Chamari Connor. Defensive back Devad Wilson of Miami has set an official this weekend for USC. He's a Florida commitment. He also has official set with Georgia, November 17, and Florida the 24th. Some of his other offers are Kentucky, Ohio State, Purdue, TCU, Tennessee, Maryland, NC State, Louisville, Central Florida, South Florida. He'll be an early signee. And in baseball, left-hander Cole Giannopoulos of Chattahoochee Valley Junior College in Alabama committed to USC for the 2018 class. He started his career at Auburn. USC and Florida women's soccer tonight. This is isn't this for the championship regular season?
To secure the championship,
yeah.
Yes.
It's a thriller. No score with 15 minutes to play in the half. Any shots on goal yet?
Stop it.
I don't think there's been any shots on goal.
We have
yet.
injury reports from both Clemson and South Carolina for the weekend. No Mark Fields, no Marcus Edmond for the Tigers, both with foot injuries. Kelly Bryant listed as will play with ankle. Again, I'm just reporting the news, folks.
That's all you can do. They say he's fine, man. Why don't you believe what they say?
Because he said he was fine going into Syracuse, and he wasn't fine. Corn, that's why.
Was he not fine from the get-go, or did it become that he was not fine after he re-injured the ankle?
They said he was not fine, and then he tweaked his ankle in the first quarter.
They said he was fine.
They said he was fine going in.
Then he tweaked the ankle.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he could be fine. He could be 100% and then tweak the ankle Saturday night coming.
Perpetual skeptic in me thinks otherwise. Injured linemen will return Saturday for South Carolina. The ones who filled in while they were injured will also play. No Terry Gujar, no Chad Terrell.
Okay, speaking of the Gamecocks, they had a great running attack last time out, really pounded the football. Mon Denson got some very good runs in, and does he expect to be a factor moving forward?
He will take over a lot of the workload from Rico Dowdle, who is now injured.
Yes, sir. I'm just waiting on my opportunity to keep getting in there and prove to the coach that I can play.
What's been your approach over this bye week? Have you been working out more than you usually have, starting to practice a little more?
Yeah, I've been getting a rotation a little bit more, especially since Rico's down. I just got to come in and fill in.
What can you do different than AJ or Tyson?
I think I don't really do nothing different. I just I add on to the run game a little bit, polish it up just a little bit more.
Does it make it easier or more difficult to have a rotation of guys versus having, like one bell cow kind of guy?
It make it a little bit more easier because we can always be fresh out there on the field.
What was that like when you got the call against Tennessee and kind of go in the middle of that long drive?
It was fun just to be in that many plays because Arkansas got in at the end. It really ran like one play just to hold the game off. But to actually have a full drive, it was exciting.
What does it mean to you to get this chance, man? I know you don't want anybody to get hurt, but what does it mean to you to finally be out there and get some meaningful reps?
It's just a blessing. I've been here 3 years. I just been waiting on it, especially after injury, and then finally getting to actually play.
I mean, over the past 3 years, were you frustrated at all? Ever think about maybe trying your luck somewhere else?
Yeah, I was pretty frustrated, but I finally got over it, just kept working, overcame adversity, and now I'm out here.
What do you think is the biggest difference in your game since you started here to now?
Getting in shape, learning the playbook, being more confident out there on the field.
Talk about frustration. How did you get over that for 2 years?
Just sat down with myself, prayed a lot, just had to see what I was doing wrong, to see what was going on.
How did the other guys treat you during that time, Enrico and Asia? How did they kind of talk you through it?
We all treat each other good. It's a brotherhood, so we like brothers. They keep me up, keep me lifted and stuff.
Coach Bentley said, I think before August camp, that he felt you'd matured and you'd kind of changed your attitude. Do you feel that that's the case?
Yeah, because when I wasn't playing, I was really I was frustrated, like I said. But now he got me out there, and then now I'm proving that I can actually play. I think he has faith in me now.
I like him as the blocking back in that little jet sweep that they run. They were using him kind of as the back next to Bentley, and they'll run the jet sweep with either A.J. Turner or Tyson Williams. I like him in that role, and I also like him. He's a bowling ball, man. That's the thing that South Carolina needs alongside a Tyson Williams, another guy who can basically take hits and run between the tackles.
You know, what's interesting is back in the recruiting days of these guys, Tyson Williams was there for the taking for the Gamecocks out of Crestwood High School, but they took Mon Denson
instead
and did not have room. And so he goes to North Carolina. Now he ends up back at South Carolina. But, you know, when will the Gamecocks have a 1,000-yard rusher again? Their leading rusher after 7 games, Williams, has 328 yards.
Yeah, they're 12th from the bottom in the country in rushing. So,
I mean, will they have another 1,000-yard rusher in our lifetime?
Maybe not, because the way offenses rotate backs in. But Mon Denson is also valuable on special teams. If you notice, he makes a lot of tackles.
Brent Venables coming up next.
not smoke.
Now you keep your eyes open. When I tell you, start snapping. Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Brent Venables coming up for you in just a moment. Let's give you a high school football report tonight here on Sports Talk, brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. New auto insurance rates are out from Farm Bureau. You could be saving a whole lot of money. Even if you received a quote before, rates are now more competitive than ever. So get a no-obligation quote today at favrates.com. Give you a few statistical leaders, courtesy of the High School Sports Report, as we wrap up the regular season for a lot of teams tomorrow night and start the playoffs next week. Leading rusher in the state is Zach Doe of John Paul II, 1,791 yards. Jimmy Bozard of Jefferson Davis, 1,761 yards. Amir Abrams of Newberry, 1,736 yards and 28 touchdowns. Michael Dukes of First Baptist, 1,615 yards. And Kyle Wright of Ben Lippen, 1,550 yards. As far as the leading passers in the state at this point in the season, Jordan Morgan of Eastside, 2,944 yards and 34 touchdowns. Savion Watson, Chesterfield, 2,852 yards, 33 touchdowns. Sam Hartman, Oceanside Collegiate, 2,712 yards and 26 touchdowns. Corbett Glick of Hammond, 2,540 yards and 29 touchdowns. Jake Lane of PD, 2,504 yards and 33 touchdowns. And your leading receivers by yards, Gerald Shepard of Oceanside, 1,202 yards, 10 touchdowns. Lucas Prickett of Hammond, 1,141 yards, 14 touchdowns. Jay Patterson of Bluffton, 1,105 yards and 15 touchdowns. Manny Bright of Gilbert, 1,075 yards and 10 scores. Patrick Reedy, related Chuck, at Cardinal Newman, 1,017 yards and 9 touchdowns. There you go, high school football report tonight, statistically speaking, courtesy of the High School Sports Report. Brent Venables, the Clemson defensive coordinator, having to deal once again with Georgia Tech. Did a great job with a scheme last year that totally shut down Tech's offense. Hopes to do it again, but he knows it's not going to be easy.
Let a seam route go for explosive play there in the third series for a 66-yard touchdown. And a couple other small things. They were hot and took advantage of us, took advantage of the mistakes we made, and we didn't do a good job out from the get-go, though, just fitting the run, basic plays that we worked all week. Didn't have the kind of discipline with the physical toughness that it takes to go on the road and win, play good defense. So that was really from the onset. So
against Georgia Tech again this season, what's different about this year's Georgia Tech version of the Paul Johnson offense versus the first 3 years you've been here and faced them?
Well, I think they're probably running it a little bit more than they have in the past, and obviously they've been a run-heavy team, and they're closer to 90-10 than they are to 80-20, and which I think they would like to be around 80-20. So. But I think the be-back is just been terrific all year for them. Excellent player. He kind of really makes them go. And the quarterback has really made great decisions, shows good instincts in his decision-making, and his patience and poise is really outstanding for a young player. So the line's more mature, the receivers are more mature, and it's been a group that's kind of grown up in their system the last couple of years.
How do you coach at 10%?
How do you coach it?
That
I mean,
you're talking about that.
Every down's run for these guys, and it's got to be your mindset, and then you got to do a good job on their play action passes. You get a lot of one-on-one shots, but it's no different than if it was 80-20. Really, to be honest with you, and we got to do a good job of playing disciplined and playing physically tough, and being very sound in what we're doing with all the variety of runs and types of options that you're going to get. And then again, where they're trying to sneak guys past you or throw the ball over the top. It's a lot of stress, for everybody.
How much does Paul Johnson change things within the framework of that offense year to year, or even within a game?
Oh, probably a little bit, within the game, and a little bit, from year to year. Their philosophy certainly hasn't changed, but I think he's very smart in trying to manipulate, the defense and create leverage in angles that are, advantageous for them. And then they do a really good job of getting their guys to play, competitively really hard. And they're very patient with what they do as well. But, if they sense a weakness, whether it's an alignment structurally or certainly a player, they're going to attack you until you bleed to death. And, you got to have a lot of respect. Just they're some long play sheet, and you got to get to all my plays, even though that one went for 40. Too many coordinators, I think, got to get to all their calls, and they forget to come back to the good ones because they got to get to all the other ones. And trust me, they've got a ton of variety and they've got answers. It's not like they're running 3 plays, but they do a great job of tasting blood and going after.
Brent Venables, what a great
I love
coach
that guy.
he is, and does a great job.
I love that guy.
And we'll see if he dials up the right numbers against Georgia Tech again. I was shocked to see, and I hadn't checked this in a while, Florida State at Boston College tomorrow night. Only a 4.5-point favorite.
Yeah,
is
Boston
Florida
College
State.
has suddenly found an offense.
Yeah, really.
They looked pretty good last week.
Miami at North Carolina. Listen, Miami got a chance to stay undefeated. I don't think Miami is that good, but they're going to be 7-0.
But yeah, well, North Carolina's bad.
They've won 11 in a row going back to last year. Hey, Mark Richt is Mark Richt. He's doing Mark Richt type things.
How do you feel about that Tennessee-Kentucky game?
Yeah, I was going to get to that. Tennessee-Kentucky, Butch Jones, last stand. But you know what? If Mark Stoops loses this game, because they were embarrassed at Mississippi State last week, and I did not see that kind of margin coming in that game.
Kelly suspended for this game, by the way.
John Kelly, John Kelly for Tennessee.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Now, Mississippi State has to go down and play A&M, who I still think is not getting enough credit for playing Alabama close. The win over South Carolina, which is a tough one. I mean, I think, and it's weird because Mississippi State's a 1-point favorite on the road. I think A&M can win that game.
Yeah. NC State at Notre Dame, of course, that's big from a Clemson standpoint, an ACC standpoint, because NC State, which has never lost to Notre Dame, 2-0 against the Irish. Right now, State leads the Atlantic at 4-0. Now, this is a non-counting game in terms of the league.
Right.
But in terms of the national perception and the upcoming college football playoff rankings, it's a huge game. Of course, it also impacts the kickoff time for next week's game between Clemson and NC State.
It's always tough to play at Notre Dame when Notre Dame has a very talented team, but I think it works in North Carolina State's favor to have the afternoon game at 3:30.
Yeah.
And they've got the kind of offense, Phil, that can keep Notre Dame's offense off the field with ball control, passing, and running.
And, here's a case where, last year at Notre Dame, they were about ready to fire Kelly.
Right.
But they didn't. And look what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know. You cannot predict. And this is why I keep saying, look, I don't know Butch Jones from Butch Cassidy. All right, personally.
Or the Sundance.
But, he hasn't all of a sudden just forgotten everything that made him a very successful coach at other stops and also had him winning at Tennessee, maybe not to the levels that they are used to, but he found himself in a situation this year helpless at quarterback. Is he responsible? Yes, but it happens all across the country when you have to go with young quarterbacks.
Here's the problem. He's bringing in good players. The problem is what happens in the games. He is a terrible in-game coach. That's why he's on the hot seat.
Okay, we shall see. Thank you, guys. Have a great night. Thank you, Stockton. Everybody, enjoy the evening. See you back here tomorrow night to wrap up the week on Sports Talk.
He's recruiting good players.